Hello, scholars. Please incorporate these notes into your notes. This is a new chapter we're going to spend a little bit of time on, not much time. You are not responsible for reading the book as well. So you get a chapter off, and all you'll need to do is incorporate these notes into your notes, and we will pick up here tomorrow in class. So this is chapter 26. There also will not be a chapter 26 test. With that being said, this material will appear on your final, as well as the Class Jeopardy Wars, which we've talked about, which will give you extra credit on your final. So please do not forget about this material when you start preparing for my final. All right, let's get started. So what we're talking about today is we're talking about the Second Industrial Revolution, which dates are 1871 approximately to approximately 1914. 1914 is also the year that World War I begins. First, what I'd like you to do is pause this, and I want you to define the Industrial Revolution, what we talked about last chapter. Now that you've done that, basically what the Second Industrial Revolution is, it's progressing from the first. There's just new everything, new stuff, better steel, better iron. Chemicals are being used in medicine as well as weapons. Electricity, we're going to invent electricity, petroleum, gas. Society is going to change as a result of all of these new inventions, which we'll talk about. Your fun fact for today is that there is now, because of the Industrial Revolution, an established work week, Monday through Friday, Tuesday through Sunday, whatever it may be. As a result, for most people, Saturday and Sunday actually becomes a recreational weekend, much like we have today. And because there's new, cheaper forms of transportation, vacations are popular, mini trips are popular, little vacays here and there. We'll have the train, we're inventing the airplane, as well as the personal automobile. Now, why am I wasting your time talking about this? Is because this changes mass society so much. There's even more of exchange of ideas and goods, people moving from place to place. We don't just have countries where it's only made up of people who are from that country. There's so much movement because of these new inventions. So I want to just break down some of these new inventions and ideas, and I like to start first with electricity. You've been taught your whole life that Thomas Edison is the inventor of electricity, and I'm here to tell you, not so much. There's a man by the name Nikola Tesla, and he is super awesome. But basically, he is from Serbia. He was positively brilliant, spoke 9 languages. He was considered a madman. Unfortunately, he was basically taken advantage of by Edison, by other men of his time, and that's why he doesn't get a lot of credit for what he invented. But basically, it was a war between Edison and Tesla of currents. We're not going to go into the science behind it, but the currents that make electricity. And, well, Tesla eventually won. There's a lot of other things Tesla invented. We'll go a little bit more in depth tomorrow, but I really want you to remember the name Tesla, not forget about it. Light bulb, again, Edison did not invent the light bulb. He was a brilliant seller, and he was able to market and sell the light bulb, which is why we associate him with the light bulb, but he did not, in fact, invent the light bulb. Tesla did it first. Tesla did everything first, pretty much. The telephone, Alexander Graham Bell, that name should sound familiar, like the phone books. I know we don't really use phone books anymore. Fun fact, he was one of the founders of the National Geographic Society. Your parents may get subscriptions to the yellow magazines, beautiful pictures. The radio, again, Marconi, he is an Italian who technically invented radio waves. However, Tesla, again, you hear I'm saying Tesla again, Tesla is awesome. Tesla invented the radio waves before Marconi. In the late 1800s, Marconi got credit for it. Why this is important is, yeah, we like listening to the radio, but for the time being, this also is going to help us spy. We're about to get to World War I. We're about to get to World War II. We can spy on our enemies, but at the same time, our enemies can spy on us. How can all of this affect factories and industry? Well, I'll tell you. Before there was electricity, how did you have light? Well, you used candles. You used the sun. Now factories have light. They can stay open all night. You can have production going on all night. The airplane and the automobile are also invented. The airplane, just so you know, the first airplanes were used for surveillance. They were not used to move people around. That won't happen until after World War I. The automobile, we will have automobiles that are used for normal families. Let's go and talk about Henry Ford. Henry Ford came up with the Model T, this whole concept of assembly line. Do you remember what assembly line is? Basically, you may have done this in a club where if you're stuffing envelopes, one person folds the paper, the next person puts the folded paper in the envelope, the next person seals the envelope, the next person puts a stamp on the envelope. You're doing the exact same thing. And for the car, and why America, Henry Ford is American if you can't remember that, but why that became so fantastic for us is that if I bought a Model T in Boston and I was driving south and my car broke down in Virginia, well, I can take it to any automobile store and replace that part. All parts were the same. It was extremely cheap to produce the same parts, and it was also extremely cheap for Americans to have these cars and fix the broken part. Let me know if that doesn't make sense. One other fun fact about Henry Ford is he was hugely anti-Semitic, and Adolf Hitler truly admired Henry Ford. That's kind of an interesting fact that we'll bring into our conversation when we get to World War II. Department stores. Think of a store like Sears, somewhere you can get clothes, you can get food, you can get your tires changed, your oil changed. You get a vacuum. Department stores started in the late 1800s, and it was fabulous for women to go one place to get all of their shopping done. Trade unions. We kind of briefly talked about this when we talked about insurance with the Industrial Revolution, but basically a union is protecting the people. And so these were started in the late 1800s. I give you a little statistic. By 1900, 2 million workers were in trade unions in Britain. And again, that was going on strike. You can go on strike if you felt like you weren't being protected or you weren't getting enough money. Moving right along. Along with electricity and cars, medical reforms. The germ theory was invented by Louis Pasteur. You've probably heard of pasteurization. You drink pasteurized milk. If you drink milk straight out of a cow, that is unpasteurized. There are bacteria in it. Louis Pasteur, he was not a doctor, he was actually a chemist, but by removing the bacteria, he realized that it can keep you healthy. This is a picture of Pasteur. Mendel, you might have learned about this in biology. This is a Punnett square, but basically he looked at genetics. This is, big B is dominant blue, dominant brown, little b is recessive and dominant traits, and what your baby may look like, or, why is this important for Europe? Well, look at crops. If we mate this crop with this crop, what could we get? Marie Curie is a female. She's pretty awesome as well. She worked with radioactive energy. This will lead into the first X-rays. Unfortunately for her, she died because of radioactive poisoning. But exciting news about her is she's the first woman to get a Nobel Peace Prize, and she's also the only female and the first person and the only female, to get 2 Nobel Peace Prizes. That's pretty exciting. Ivan Pavlov is this guy right here. Behavioral psychology. Basically what he worked with dogs, and what his experiment was every time he fed his dogs, he would ring a bell. And eventually, after a couple of weeks, when he would ring his bell, the dogs would salivate. They just got used to when they would eat, they would hear the bell. And so their mind, when they heard the bell, that was food time. It's similar with humans. If you eat lunch every day at noon, you might get hungry every day at noon because your body is used to eating. Sigmund Freud, very famous psychologist. If you take psychology here, you will talk about him extensively. He looked at the unconscious mind and how we act. If you've heard of a Freudian slip, that's Sigmund Freud. If you don't know what that is, we'll talk about it tomorrow. He talked about everything we do, the way we behave, the way we act is our unconscious. He looked at dreams, what we dream about, etc. The world economy, basically, at this point, we left off our last chapter in 1871. Europe was split into 2 economies. You had extremely industrialized countries. You had, I want you to take a quick break right here, and I want you to write down any countries you can think of that were industrialized in Europe. We also had extremely agrarian countries. I want you to take a break and write down which countries you think were agrarian. Basically, these industrialized countries, these were the ones that were dominating money, dominating the trade, dominating trade with foreign countries like America. Throughout Europe, people did want to improve their lives. I want you to answer this question. How do you think the Europeans were interested and motivated by Karl Marx's book? Last but not least, hopefully if you are able to answer that question, you talked about communism, you talked about how the working class wanted equality. They wanted more rights. And so communism, socialism really spread throughout Europe, and people really got excited about socialism. I give you an example. This becomes very popular throughout Germany. I want you to remember this. The German Socialist Democratic Party, I know the letters look backwards, but it's just how you say it in German. So the SPD became an extremely popular political party in Germany and will remain extremely popular until Germany's time. And what I want to finish with lastly, and this is also very important leading into our next chapter, is a division, a break between communism. There's two groups. You had the pure Marxists that were very, very violent. They were radical. They wanted communism, and they were willing to do anything to get communism in their country. The revisionists, it's exactly what it sounds like. When you write your research paper for me, I told you rough draft, rough draft, rough draft. Revision, making mistakes, but then correcting it, working together to make it perfect. And that's what they wanted. They wanted to work with the other political parties to come up with something perfect, to come up with a perfect communist system for their country. Thank you very much for your time. We will start here tomorrow, and have a good night. Bye.